Hey y'all, welcome to a new What's for Dinner. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing 5 super delicious dinners that I have recently made for my family. I feel like this lineup was like extra good, so I'm really excited to share these recipes with y'all. Everything was easy to make and fairly budget friendly, all of my favorite things. So let's go ahead and jump on into the first one. We're going to start off strong with this new recipe that I came across for some garlic Parmesan chicken mini meatloaves. So you're going to need 2 pounds of ground chicken. I'm not sure if I've ever bought ground chicken before, and I'm not going to lie, I was nervous to use it, but I will say it's a lot cheaper than ground beef, so that's a plus off the bat. I'm seasoning it with some salt, pepper, and onion powder. The original recipe did call for diced onions instead, but I opted to replace it with the onion powder. It also calls for a lot of garlic. So for the meatloaf itself, it called for like 8 to 10 cloves of garlic. Mine were on the bigger side, so I believe I used about 6. And it does specifically call for it to be crushed in, so I am using my garlic press. If you've watched me for a while, you know it's not my favorite utensil because I feel like it's a bit wasteful, a little bit hard to clean, but I will say I really like how finely it minced the garlic. I also added in an egg and 3/4 of a cup of some Italian style breadcrumbs. I also added in a good amount of some dried parsley. You can use fresh if you want to. We just honestly prefer the dried, and I always have that on hand. I did also shred up a whole block of Parmesan cheese using my little KitchenAid attachment that shreds stuff. I don't use that near enough, but it was really handy for this. I did add in about 3 ounces of it, and the best way to mix meatloaf is to go in with your hands. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just going in there and folding everything until it looks nice and incorporated, just like that. So the next thing to do is to grab you a muffin pan. Mine has been well loved. I've had this thing for several years, and I'm just going in and spraying it with some cooking spray. Now, this one that I have sprays out weird, so I did have to go in with my silicone brush and kind of swirl it around just to make sure that it was greased really well because I wanted to make sure that these would not stick. I know that ground chicken has like very little fat content, so as you can see, I'm just taking my largest cookie scoop and I'm just adding the meatloaf mixture to each little section. You can definitely do this with a spoon if you want to. Just make sure they're filled to the top. So my oven is preheated to 375 degrees and I'm going to bake those for 25 minutes. Meanwhile, I'm going to start making the garlic Parmesan sauce. So to my skillet, I've heated up a couple tablespoons of olive oil and I'm crushing in about 3 cloves of fresh garlic, again using my garlic press. I'm going to take my silicone whisk and I'm just going to stir or saute that garlic in with the olive oil for a couple of minutes until it's nice and fragrant. Then I'm going to add a tablespoon of just some plain all-purpose flour. I'm going to keep on whisking that. You always want to cook out your flour when adding it to a sauce. So I let that cook down for a few minutes. And now I'm going to add in 1.5 cups of some heavy whipping cream. I always try to do what the directions say by like slowly adding it in while stirring, but it never goes too well for me. So I just dump it in. But if you do that, you do want to make sure that you stir it pretty quickly afterwards. Stir it really well to make sure that you break up all those clumps. You definitely want a really nice smooth sauce. So as you can see, I've got it nice and smooth. I'm seasoning it with some salt, and the recipe did say to not let the sauce boil. I wasn't too worried about it, but I did turn off the heat at this point, and I'm just hitting it with 3 ounces of Parmesan cheese. Gonna keep on stirring until that cheese is nice and melted. And then lastly, I'm just going to hit it with some dried parsley. And once I get that stirred in good, I'm going to remove the sauce from the heat. Now, this is pretty similar to an Alfredo sauce, just slightly different off the top of my head. The only difference I can think of is I use butter in my Alfredo sauce. But here is the chicken meatloaves once it's pulled from the oven. As you can see, they have a nice golden brown color on top. I did insert a meat thermometer into one just to make sure that it was done, and it was perfect. So 25 minutes worked perfectly for me. And here I was just wanting to show y'all how effortlessly these came out of the tin. I had no issues with sticking, even though I have an old pan, so I was pleased with that. And here is my plate. I have 2 of the chicken meatloaves and I'm spooning plenty of that garlic Parmesan sauce over the top, and dinner is done. As you can see, I served it with some green beans and some homemade mashed potatoes. I did end up adding some extra parsley over the sauce and the mashed potatoes because I just thought everything was looking a little bit pale, but oh my goodness, guys, this recipe is seriously just like outstanding. It's one of those dishes that makes you look at somebody and say, wow. And that doesn't happen all that often. So I was the most excited about sharing this recipe with you guys. It is hands down a new family favorite. It is so flavorful. That sauce just makes it over the top. It's got the best texture and it was so nice and juicy. I highly recommend it. Next up, I'm going to share my favorite recipe for barbecue ribs. So this is pretty much always the package that I buy. It's the pork back ribs, and these are usually always a pretty good price. So of course, I'm going to take those out of the package, and I like to work with these on like a big piece of foil or parchment paper, wax paper, whatever, just to kind of minimize the mess on the counter. And it is important to flip these over and remove that membrane from the back. I know this looks kind of crazy here. I was having a little bit of trouble, but it is usually fairly easy to do. You just kind of start in the middle and lift it up, and then you can usually just pull it on up and rip it off. You do want to take a paper towel and pat these dry on both sides. I'm going to get these flipped over, and I'm going to get these cut in half because I am going to be letting these cook in the crock pot, and to make them fit, you got to cut them in half. You could do it after you season it, but I prefer to do it before. That way I can see and get a more clean cut. So the next step is to grab some Dijon mustard, or any mustard, really. You can use regular mustard or just whatever mustard you have. You're not going to taste it. This is just used as a tenderizer. It's also going to help your seasoning stick as well. So as you can see, I'm just rubbing these down with my hands on both sides, making sure that they are fully covered. We only have ribs like 1 to 2 times a year, so it's always a treat. And I always say that when I make them that I need to make them more often because they are just so delicious. This is the best recipe. So I did make a homemade dry rub. This has some salt, pepper, onion and garlic powder, chili powder, and brown sugar. It is the perfect dry rub, and I love how these are very well seasoned, as you can see. And as always, anytime I follow a recipe, you can always find it in my description box. There will be a link to it, and you just click it if you want to get the exact measurements for this dry rub. I did add that seasoning blend to both sides of the ribs, as you guys seen. Definitely want to make sure that everything is completely coated in it. And as you can see, I'm just going in with my hands and I'm really pressing and patting in those seasonings to make sure that they're going to stick. Next, you're going to grab some of your favorite barbecue sauce. I love Sweet Baby Ray's. I'm doing the hickory brown sugar one this time, and I'm just adding a small amount to start with. I will definitely be slathering on more towards the end of the cook time, but this will work for now. I'm just using my silicone brush to spread that out more evenly, and per usual, of course, I'm going to do that to the bottom side as well. And afterwards, I just wanted to note I did wash this brush really well because we are going to be using it later and I don't want to cross-contaminate. But now let's move on over to the crock pot. So I am going to add in a 1/2 cup of chicken broth to the bottom of the crock pot. And now I'm going to start layering in those ribs. So this is why we got those cut in half. It is completely fine to let those overlap. If you like onions, you can slice you one up and just kind of sprinkle that over top of the ribs. I skipped that step, but I did take some fresh cloves of garlic, thinly slice those and put those on top. I added my lid and I'm going to let those cook on high for 4 hours. So while those are slow cooking, I'm going to get my sides ready. And I thought these sides were like extra good, so I wanted to make sure I showed how I did it. So I'm going to be making some jalapeno popper potato skins. So I just have some regular russet potatoes that I scrubbed and washed really well. I sprayed those with some olive oil spray, and I'm just going in with my hands, rubbing that in really well. And you can use regular salt if you want to, but I'm just obsessed with garlic salt. I think it adds extra flavor, so I just sprinkle that onto each potato. Again, just giving those a quick rub to get that more evenly spread out. And those are going to go in the oven at 400 degrees for 1 hour. Now, this wasn't in the recipe, but I think it's important to note. I think at the 30-minute mark, you should always rotate your potatoes. I just feel it gives it a more even cook and you don't end up with like a crispy bottom. I also am realizing I forgot to mention that I did poke holes in the potatoes before I baked them. Some people say that's not necessary, sorry, but I am not going to risk it. But once these are cool enough to handle, as you see, I did split those all in half, and now I'm just going in with a spoon, and I'm scraping out a good portion of that potato. You definitely want to leave enough so that it will hold its shape, but I just repeated that to all of them, and you can do so many things with the leftover potatoes. I actually did a quick, potato salad with it, which is one of my favorite, all-time favorite things, and it turned out really good, so don't throw away those potato fillings. But now, as you can see, I'm just getting those skins flipped on over so that they are skin side up, and we're going to spray these with olive oil again because we want these to be extra crispy. And I'm just brushing that out, and I've bumped my oven up to 450 degrees, and I'm going to pop these in for 10 minutes. So while those are in the oven, I'm going to get started on the filling. So that's going to be 1 8-ounce block of room temperature cream cheese, about a 1/4 cup of some sour cream. We're going to do about 1/2 cup of some cheese. This is just some sharp cheddar that I shredded up. And I also diced up 1 large jalapeno, and I minced up 1 fresh clove of garlic. The recipe didn't call for any seasoning, but I added a little bit of the Lawry seasoned salt, and I'm glad that I did. I feel like it definitely needed a little bit of salt, just some seasoning for our taste. And it took a little bit of patience to get this completely folded together, but in reality, it only took a couple of minutes. But just keep on going until everything looks nice and mixed. This clip, for some reason, is super glitchy. I don't know why. My camera just has a mind of its own, and I just have to go with it. So I'm sorry about that. But I'm just simply taking those potato skins from the oven after that 10 minutes, and I am taking that jalapeno cream cheese mixture, and I am just filling these up. It was very easy to do. I've also lowered my oven to 350 degrees at this point. Lastly, I did fry up a few strips of bacon. I crumbled them up, and I'm just layering that all over the top of the potato skins. If you like bacon wrapped jalapeno poppers, then you would love this recipe. And if you love potato skins like me, you're really going to love this recipe. So I'm going to pop those in the oven for a final 10 minutes, and they are finally done. And this is what they look like. I was super excited about these. It combines 2 of my favorite things. I also am going to show how I make my fried corn. I don't make it this way too often, but I definitely need to because it is just so much better than your regular corn. So I have 4 ears of corn here, and I'm just shucking those and removing all the silks. I wanted to show me doing it to at least one of them, just in case somebody out there watching has never done it themselves. I just wanted to show you how easy it is. And we are going to want to remove the kernels from the cob, so I'm going to show myself doing one of them. I did order this corn cutter off of Amazon. This was my first time ever using it, so it did take me a little bit to get used to it. It was a little bit different. It was a pretty handy dandy little tool, but in reality, it's just easy to do it with a knife. And I know there's the bunt pan trick. I've done that before. I should have done that here really, but you just stick the sharp part of the corn into the bunt hole pan, and then you just slice it down with your knife, and it just falls into the pan perfectly. This is kind of messy when you do it this way, but it's all good. Now, this part is important, so I wanted to show it. You definitely want to remove the milk from the cob and get that down in there too. So I'm just taking the dull side of my knife and just scraping it down. As you can see, the knife is coated in that milky looking mixture. That's what you want. That's what's going to make this dish so good. So there it is after I got all of the kernels removed. I got a big old bowl of corn. To my skillet, I'm going to melt down a few tablespoons of butter. I'm also going to get my bacon grease out of the fridge, and I'm going to add in a spoonful of that. That is going to make this extra good. It gives it that bacony flavor. Once it was melted down, I went ahead and added in all of my fresh corn, and I'm going to add in a couple big spoonfuls of sugar. If you have never added sugar to your corn before, you are missing out. I swear it just brings out the best flavor. I also added in just a little bit of salt and pepper to taste, and that's it ingredient-wise. I'm just sauteing that around for a bit, and I would say I let this cook for anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes. As you can see, once it gets really nice and heated through, a lot of liquid's going to come out, which is what you want. I just come in and stir this every 5 minutes or so, and I just wait until a lot of that liquid evaporates down, and that's all there is to it. It is just so easy, but it is crazy flavorful. It's delicious. So back to these ribs. The 4 hours is up, and it is time to remove these to a cookie sheet, which, as you can see, is usually pretty tricky because these are fall off the bone tender. So if that happens, don't worry about it. It's okay. I'm going to add plenty more barbecue sauce, as you can see, and I am spreading it out with my brush once again. I have got my broiler preheated in my oven, and I'm just going to pop these in for 5 minutes. Now, you can rotate these and do it to the other side. Do it a couple of times. I know a lot of people do that, but I just like to do it for one time because I do not want to risk drying these out. But broiling it like that will caramelize the barbecue sauce to it, which makes it amazing. So here is my plate. I was super proud of this meal. The corn and the ribs were a 10 out of 10 per usual. I'm going to give the potato skins a 9. Now they were delicious, don't get me wrong, but I just wish that I sauteed the jalapenos and garlic before adding them to the cream cheese mixture because I could just tell that they needed a little bit more cook time for our preference. The garlic was pretty strong and potent, but other than that, this was just such a delicious meal. It's definitely the most effort out of this whole video, but it was 100% worth it. So good. On this night, I found this ball of fresh mozzarella cheese in my fridge, and I knew that I really needed to use it up. I believe I used it on the same day that it expired. Not to confuse that I'm scared of expiration dates because I definitely am not, but I just felt called to use it. So we're going to do a quick mozzarella chicken bake. So here I just have 2 boneless, skinless chicken breasts that I sliced in half to make 4 smaller pieces, which is the perfect amount for my family. And I'm just going in and seasoning both sides with my trusty Lawry's garlic salt and black pepper. You can definitely add more seasonings if you want to, but this is just a super kid-friendly meal, and it is perfect for those busy weeknights because this is really quick to throw together. So I am going to sear these in a hot skillet first. So I have my heat on about a medium-high heat. There's a little bit of oil in the skillet, and I'm just going to cook these for about a minute per side. Again, I'm not trying to cook these all the way through. I just wanted to give them some color and a little bit of extra flavor. So I'm going to get those transferred on over to my casserole dish. I absolutely love this one. It's a Pioneer Woman brand, and I think it's just so pretty. I love the color and the design. I swear anytime I use it, it instantly improves my mood. But anyways, you're going to grab a jar of your favorite pasta sauce. We are big Prego fans, and I'm going to add a good amount over the chicken. I want those to be fully covered. I'm also going to add some Parmesan cheese over the top. If you have fresh, use that. I used all of my fresh in that first recipe, so I'm just going with the bottled. I did slice up that fresh mozzarella, which I didn't do the best job at, but I'm going to add 4 slices down, so 1 slice per piece of chicken, and I'm going to pop that in the oven at 375 degrees. Now, it's going to depend on how thick your chicken is for how long you cooked it. I did 15 minutes because mine were on the smaller side, but I just lastly topped it with some dried parsley, and that was it. It doesn't get any easier than that. I swear a kid could make this. It is so simple. So I'm just going to serve this over some angel hair spaghetti, and I'm just taking some of that extra sauce that was left in the bacon dish and pouring that over the pasta. And I served it with a quick cucumber and tomato salad, which this is just a homegrown tomato I diced up, an English cucumber. I used the rest of that leftover mozzarella cheese, and I marinated it in some Olive Garden Italian dressing, a little salt and pepper, and it was perfect. It went so well with this, and we all really enjoy this meal. Now, do we like actual chicken Parmesan where it's been breaded and fried first better? Of course we do, but we also really enjoy this lighter version, and I think it's really important to keep these super simple meals in your back pocket for when you need them. This next recipe is another one that I'm really excited to talk about. I had this done in 20 minutes or less, and it gives me all the fall vibes, which makes me so happy I can't even tell you. But it's going to be a beef and ramen vegetable soup. This really caught my attention. So in my Dutch oven, I'm just browning up 1 pound of ground beef. I'm seasoning it with some salt, pepper, onion, and garlic powder. If any of y'all are wondering where I got my salt and pepper shakers, I got those at Cracker Barrel. I am a sucker for Halloween decor. I just can't help it. So once I got that browned up, I'm going to add in this whole container of V8 tomato juice. I believe this one was like 46 ounces, but I love recipes that call for V8 tomato juice. Like I use that in my actual homemade vegetable soup, and I swear it's key. I'm also going to add in a package of onion soup mix, which is big for me. If you know, you know. I'm also going to add in a whole package of frozen mixed vegetables, and this recipe calls for a package of beef ramen noodles. My kids are obsessed with those ramen noodle packets. So when I told them that that was going to be in this recipe, they were so excited. They were literally standing over my shoulders while I made this, just asking over and over when it would be done. So you start by adding in the seasoning first. You let it boil and you simmer it for 10 minutes. And then after the 10 minutes, you can add in that block of ramen, and you're just going to let it cook for the 3 minutes like the package says so on the back. And I'm sure a lot of you are thinking that that's not going to be enough ramen for this big old pot. I thought the same thing, but it is perfect. I promise you. You want it to be more of a vegetable soup with just like a little bit of pasta in it. So it all balances out perfectly. And this amount was the perfect portion for a family of 4. So if you have a bigger family, you will definitely want to double it. So here is how I served it up. We all had a grilled cheese on the side. Anytime I make like a vegetable soup, we always like to have it with grilled cheese. It's so good to like dip it in there. But you guys, this turned out so good. Like I knew it was going to be good when I came across it, but both of my kids both went for seconds. Josh and I really loved it, and it's cheap. It's good. I really hope that you guys give this one a try. Last but certainly not least, I'm going to be making a no-peak pork chop and rice bake. We absolutely love recipes like this with either pork or chicken, so needless to say, we were excited. So to my 9x13 casserole dish, I did spray it with some cooking spray, and I'm just adding 1 can of cream of chicken soup and 1 can of cream of mushroom soup. I used to not use cream of mushroom soup, but I no longer fear it. I actually like the flavor of it. I'm also going to add in 2 cups of chicken broth. You could definitely mix all of this in a bowl first and then dump it in your casserole dish, but I like to save a dish wherever I can. I'm also going to add in 1.5 cups of some plain uncooked white long grain rice, and I'm going to do another packet of onion soup mix. I'm just using the Save-A-Lot brand. I'm going in with my whisk, and I'm just going to get all of this mixed together really well, get everything nicely distributed, and now I'm going to start layering on some pork chops. So I'm using my favorite Uncle Charlie pork chops, and this recipe specifically called for this Lawry seasoned pepper, which I've never seen or heard of before, but I found it at my Walmart. And if you are a pepper lover like me, you're gonna love that seasoning if you choose to make it, but you could always do any other seasoning. If you don't want to, that's fine. I did do 8 pork chops in total. My kids love pork chops, so I wanted to make sure everyone had 2 each just in case they wanted it. I did cover it tightly with some tinfoil, and I just simply popped it in the oven for 1 hour and 15 minutes, and that was it. Easy peasy. I served this alongside some steamed broccoli, and I have to brag on the kids for a second because they actually ate the broccoli and loved it, and that never happens. Like I can get them to eat broccoli in a few certain recipes, but never just like plain it on the side like this, so that made me so happy. As for the pork chops and rice, it was really good, super flavorful. None of us really cared for the onion soup mix in it though, which kind of shocked me, but I would just leave that out next time. But that is all I got for y'all in today's video. I really appreciate y'all watching, and I also wanted to say thank you so much to the ones who have been patient and understanding with me over this summer. I know that my uploads have been all over the place, but the kids are officially back in school. It's going to be a lot easier to pump out the content. I am ready. I hope you guys are too. I hope you all have a great rest of your week, and I will see y'all in my next video. Bye guys.